So this is Far From Home. If you please, Elena, I undo my embroidered gown and let it slide onto the dusty studio floor. Tonight, Elena is my name. Velek spotted the advert when he was balling up the free newspaper to light the fire and smoothed it out on the sticky carpet to study the details before handing me his phone. No interview, no paperwork, cash in hand, just a name required. So here I sit, as directed by the greying middle-aged man who introduced himself as Philip, on a dais created from planks and chairs and draped with red chenille. The drape is too big to be a tablecloth, although it has that look about it. A comforting, domestic sort of look. Students arrive and choose easels. They stare at their blank paper or busy themselves sorting different grades of charcoal, avoiding looking at me. Philip adjusts the overhead lights and the large angled windows where images of the room are superimposed upon the dusky sky and the city lights. Remember what we've talked about? Observe and plan. Don't rush in, says Philip to the class. I feel conspicuous, yet so small. I don't weigh much because he checks my weight, and unclothed I am far from perfect. One late abortion has left me with silvery stretch marks edging my belly like lacework. But I was assured on the phone that they wanted a real woman. This made me smile because very little of me is real. My lips are plumped with cheap filler, injected in our kitchen by a beautician he booked one evening. My breasts contain jellied blobs of silicone inserted in a dingy clinic on a weekend trip to Riga, where he has old friends. As the students start to plot my body onto their paper, my mind wanders down alleys and back streets, mapping cities through which I have passed. I see Philip moving around the room, leaning closer to students, advising on a line, a dimension, a curve. I concentrate on my breathing, my stillness. Keeping perfectly still is easy for me. You can get through anything if you breathe in the right way. You can put yourself in another place. This place smells of chalk, paint, turps. Within my limited line of vision, there are earthenware pots of desiccated flowers, piles of paper with curling edges, and paint-stained wooden benches piled with random objects. A road mender's lantern, its bulb a dull red eye. A pair of men's leather boots. Candlesticks, fir cones, animal skulls. Everything dusty and dead, here to be commemorated, immortalised, waiting for their story to be told. My mind strays to the tale of the old fisherwoman who lifted the lid on a kettle of eels before they were fully cooked, and was forced to listen to each one's haunting tale until they formed into one continuous sea creature and entered her body. I have an urge to leap up, but I squeeze my internal muscles instead, trying to reassure myself that I am not home to a slippery, parasitic intruder. I start to tell myself a story, a distraction, building in each object I can see. Candlesticks in the church at home, dead flowers in the village graveyard, earthenware by the stove in our kitchen, fir cones in the forest that surrounded our village, which I left in the dark, animal skulls and bones, recently picked clean of meat, in the clearings where we stopped to rest, where others before us had waited for the call. The road mender's lantern lighting the shiny road to the ferry port. The custom officer's boots, which I glimpsed through a gap in the canvas load covering, my urine cooling on my clothing, and my tongue searching desperately for saliva to swallow, praying I would not cough. A sudden shocking bell indicates that it's break. The students move off swiftly to get coffee. As I pull on my dressing gown and stretch, Philip asks if I would like to join them, but I shake my head. My small talk in English is limited, and my thoughts about past humiliation have made me afraid to consume a drink until I get home. I'm happy to stay in the studio on my own, to stretch and to wander around the easels seeing what they have made of me. I don't recognise myself in the charcoal lines I see. I didn't really expect to. Then I examine the objects on the benches and watch the door, put a small dusty fir cone into the pocket of my gown. When Philip and the students return, I am instructed to take a new position with a different view. He indicates with words and gestures, reaching out to touch me at one point, then stopping himself. I wouldn't mind if he touched me. I am a mannequin, scarcely real, hardly breathing. I would not run screaming if he broke the rules and touched me to reposition me. But I see two of the women students exchange glances, and I know that in this situation there will be no touch. The physical contact I am used to is not in this contract. In my new position, I'm relieved to see an indication of life. An onion amongst the object trouvé on the windowsill that has sprouted, green and white ribbons curving their way towards the light. The heating goes off at 8, regardless of evening class hours, and I spend the latter part of the evening getting increasingly cold. It's a relief when Philip draws the session to a close and I can pull on my dressing gown and scuttle to the toilet to get dressed. Then I call at the office, where I'm given a small sealed envelope. I smile at the woman who hands it to me. I smile even more at the Queen's face visible through the packet's window. I picture her sitting for this portrait, naked, except for her crown, surrounded by old boots and sprouting onions. The taxi driver looks at me suspiciously. Perhaps he's picked me up from a club, or watched me sitting with punters in a bar, my eyes wide with fake attentiveness, uncomfortable in cheap, lacy underwear. When he asks for the destination, his English is as heavily accented as my own, but not in a familiar way. Our journeys have been on different roads, and we complete this one in silence. When I get out at the house, I see the curtain move. Velik opens the reinforced door, and I slide in past the boxes of merchandise topped with piles of junk mail. He has his mobile in his hand and is talking about a meeting place and a deal. He holds out his hand and I pass him the envelope. He rips it open, phone between his expensive coat collar and diamond-studded ear, and flicks a note back to me. Then he turns his back and I go into the kitchen. There are signs that he's had people here, debris from drug use. The front door slams. I walk briskly to my room and hide the note with others inside a novel tucked amongst the books. I can save because I have avoided developing expensive habits, however tempting the distraction. This is my escape fund, and it is growing from its small roots. I make a big mug of strong coffee and start to warm up. I like the work tonight. I hope he lets me go back. I sit at his desk and find a blank piece of paper. Dearest grandmother, I write. I have found a nice place to live and work in a hotel with many others from our country. We eat together in the kitchen. One day a delivery man brought a tub of eels which reminded me of our folk tales. It is hard work here, but I am happy. I like being a room maid because the cleaning products have a pine smell, which reminds me of the forests at home. I reach into my shoulder bag, shake out the dressing gown and feel in the pocket. I examine the tiny fir cone, then hold it to my nose and inhale. Like me, It only holds a vague resemblance to what it once was. Like me, it will always belong to a forest far away. I tuck it away and remind myself that one day soon I will go home. There we are. Thank you.